Well, I hope you treat me like a guest. Thank you for that song. Very good. There's a lot of things that can be conveyed through a song, and I don't know, I guess it's the emotion, the feeling that goes with it that makes expression from our hearts to whatever we're trying to convey, whether it's spiritual or just worldly things. But I think God is pleased when our hearts express our gratitude and our love for Him. I'd like to, my message today is what to do, but I think a lot of times we, in our Christian walk, we kind of wonder, well, what should I be doing? I remember in my former life, and I'm not talking about referring to any kind of reincarnated life from a former existence, as some may imagine, but I'm talking about a time in my life when my priorities in life were whatever it took to make me feel good. I was possessed with searching for something that would give me purpose and satisfaction, but I was always looking for something. I think a lot of people are looking for something, and they just can't find it. And that's where I was, because I just wasn't finding it. And there's a song from the 60s. Some of you old folks might remember it. It was by Peggy Lee. And it's the name of the song is That All There Is. And this song kind of points out something that Solomon says, and in expressing where in Ecclesiastes, where he talks about the vanity of the purpose in living, that there's no, really future or purpose in it. And of course, back then I wasn't reading the Bible, but I was listening to the radio. Maybe somebody should have told me I should have looked someplace else, should turn to the Bible, but nobody was telling me that. But I want to go through these verses because there's three parts to this song with no conclusion. And then I want to get into the conclusion. But the song starts out that she talks about remembering when she was a little girl and their house caught on fire. And her father gathered her up and carried her outside, and she talks about shivering outside and watching the house go up in flames. And she says, and I watched the whole world go up in flames. And if you know what a house fire is like, that's the way it is. In just a moment, everything's gone. And then she says, is that all there is to a fire? Is that all there is? Everything's gone. And, here today, they're, gone the next moment. Is that all there is? And then she has a line, and she repeats after each of these little parts here. It says, if that's all there is, my friends, let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball. If that's all there is. Now, that phrase, and I don't talk that way normally, it's in this song, but it reflects what a lot of people feel. If life is so vain, well, I might as well live it, and that's what I think a lot of people do. I know when I go home, the folks back home, and in the evenings, a lot of the farmers, I'm sure it's not just up north, but they all go to the bar after work or whatever, and drink, and I think they're looking for something. A lot of people do a lot of things that they're trying to fulfill, but it's just like they're saying, well, is that all there is? life can be kind of vain, but the next verse goes into, she talks about when she was young and she went to the circus. And it was the greatest show on earth, and there was clowns and elephants and all kinds of things, dancing bears and trapeze artists and all these things. And she sat there watching, and she says, but I had this feeling that there was something missing. Didn't know what it was, but when it was over, she said to herself, is that all there is to a circus? And, I reread this song, and I thought, that's a description of how life is. We go to a circus to have fun, and whatever we do. We go there, and you heard the phrase, life is like a circus. Well, a circus, when the circus is over, it's over and it's done. And I think about a lot of things we do for fun. And if you did those same things over and over and over again, they're just not fun anymore. And that's one of the vanities of life that Solomon talks about, because we want to have a good time, we want to have fun, but we want, I think deep inside, we want something that satisfies, that fulfills, that gives us hope for a future. And then after she talks about this at the circus, she asks that question again, is that all there is? And if that's all there is, let's just keep dancing and da-da-da-da, if that's all there is. I guess the big word in that is the little word, if. And then the third part of the song, she goes into relationships. She fell in love and met a wonderful boy, and they, gazed into each other's eyes, and then it talks about the relationship coming to an end. And she thought she'd die, but she didn't, and she said to herself, is that all there is to love? And we see a lot of tragedies around us of people getting into relationships, and I'm sure a lot of us have I'm not just talking about marriage, but there's a lot of relationships that we have, and they're friends that suddenly they're not our friends anymore. And it just seems like everything is so cheap. A real lasting relationship should be more than that, it seems like. And, she goes, ends it with in the chorus, asking, is that all there is? And if not, let's just keep dancing. And, it just, and then the song closes with, she stops the song and goes into a dialogue. She says, if that's all there is, my friend, let's keep, and then she starts talking. She says, I know you're saying to yourself, if that's the way you feel at all, why don't you just end it? Referencing that, well, you could just take your life and then it'd be over, and you wouldn't have to experience that vanity. But it just says, well, it'd probably be the same answer. Is that all there is? And I think in the scriptures uses songs and illustrations of that. And when I heard that song when I was younger, to me it just expressed the vanity of life, the no purpose in it. And unfortunately, this song didn't give any answers. It just expressed the vainness that really life is. And actually, Paul says something very similar to that. He says, eat, drink, and be merry. He's talking about those who didn't believe in the resurrection, that, if there's no resurrection, what's the purpose in life? We might as well eat, drink, and be merry, and for tomorrow we die. And that's all life has to offer if that's all there is. But something happened. I get back to my kind of my testimony here. During my former life, something happened that got my attention. And you could it's almost like I started hearing a different song. Instead of being if that's all there is, it was more like there is something else. And that's when someone introduced me to someone that told me of the Lord, and it wasn't just ritualistic religion, which I was familiar with, but it was real, and it was real words. And I came to know who Jesus really was, instead of, I heard it in vain, used in vain more than anything else, and I learned what John 3:16 really meant. And you know, I felt, of course I guess looking back, I was only 23, but from my perspective then, I had spent a lot of years doing a lot of dumb things, and a lot of things that were vain, and I just, you know, I lived for the fun of the moment or whatever, but you know, these things they were just depressing. Life was depressing because it was so meaningless, but you know, because it just left you empty and nothing to look forward to. But you know, I found something that gave me a whole new perspective on life. I found a life that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. It was you know, a new life as a child of God. And I was, I realized then, I got into the scriptures and studied the Bible, wanted to know what God's word said. And there was no minister at the church there up in North Dakota. So I drove 600 miles to Stanberry, Missouri, and to be baptized. I didn't even have $20 in my pocket. But I drove this little Fiat all the way to Stanberry from Fargo, and I was baptized there. That's where I met Rose. At that time, I didn't know, you know, I was in love with the Lord. I didn't care about a relationship, but He introduced me to her, and I was. It was a good time. And it's something that it's a new lifestyle, and it changes your life. I remember my baptism when we sing songs here today, and we sing songs that I heard during my baptism. It reminds me of that. I mean, it's such a precious memory. But you know, one of the things that impressed me more than anything was it was the real high. You know, in the 60s, everybody was looking for a high of some kind or another, and I suppose they still are. They probably always have. But those early days in my Christian walk were very fulfilling. They're memories I'll always cherish. And you know, I think a lot of you have a testimony too, and you look back at those times, and you remember that. But you know, some of those things are good, but there are disappointments that came along. And I don't want to depress anybody, but you know, I had a lot of friends that I had in the world, and I hung around with, and I cared for them. I got a few of them to go to church with me a time or two, but you know, I felt that, well, if I remain friends with them, and you know, they'll eventually come around. Well, you know, it really didn't work out that way. It turned out that they were more successful in getting me to do what I didn't want to do than I was able to get them to do what they didn't want to do. They just pulled me down. And I realized that you know, I was suffocating. I didn't live around other brethren than that. And I knew that I had to separate myself. And Paul talks about that. about being separate, and about fellowship, how important it is. But I just felt I needed to flee. In 1 Timothy 6:11-12, it says, "But you, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith, lay hold on eternal life, to which you are also called and have confessed the good confession in the presence of many witnesses." Amen. So, become a Christian isn't always a cakewalk. There's challenges that come along, and there's decisions that we have to make, and sometimes we have to decide how close our friends really are, and that we're going to. I guess I still have many of those people that I know, and I call them friends, but they're not friends like when I look out in the pews, the people that I know here, that I share so much more with. One of my biggest disappointments was with my dad. He was dying of cancer, and he was a good man. He worked hard, sun up to sundown, but he didn't know God. He was raised in the Lutheran church, and he didn't go to church. But his cornrows were straighter than anybody's, and he always took pride in his work, and he provided for the family. But but I wanted to tell him what I knew, and he just wanted to talk about I should put in a pipeline for the dairy so that we could sell grade A milk, and anyway, I bring that out because I know that a lot of you feel the same way about people that you love and have loved in the past. You want so bad for them to share in that love of God and to be established, but everybody has to make their own decisions. And I know that, I've been disappointed in the past that people haven't accepted, and I know I'll probably be disappointed again. 2 Thessalonians 2, chapter 10-12 says, "And with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." See, the key here is they did not receive the love of the truth. And we talked about this some in class, how that, people have to be convinced themselves. And you can't talk somebody into being saved. I can't go down the pew and grab somebody and dunk them in the water and that saves them. That doesn't work that way. God wants our hearts, and he wants all of us, and he wants our commitment. And more than anything, he wants to have faith in him. People have other priorities, just like we at one time had other priorities in our life. But you just can't force it on people. But that doesn't mean you can't tell them. I still believe that you have to tell them. One way or another, whether they accept or not, you have to tell them. Because if you don't tell them, they don't have a decision to make. If you don't tell them, they don't have a chance. And Paul says, how will they hear without a preacher? And you can't let somebody else do it. I don't think it's the person who is the most effective witness to someone is the person that they know and they love. Therefore, you're expecting somebody else to tell them for you. that's not always, that's not the best avenue. The best avenue is when the early church grew so quickly, it was because of they were told by their loved ones and people they knew. Despite all those who, I know that I've been disappointed. I still, there is a great joy in seeing when someone accepts salvation through Jesus Christ. There's for a Christian, there's no greater joy, I think, than seeing someone accept the Lord, because it says that even the angels in heaven rejoice. So it's not all negative, but it's reality. The prophet Jeremiah, in chapter 8 and verse 18, he says, "I would comfort myself in sorrow. My heart is faint in me." Today, the prophet Jeremiah sorrowed for his brethren because, he tried to tell them, but they just didn't listen. We have sorrow for our friends that don't listen. In verse 20, he says, and in this phrase, he is expressing his love for those, his loved ones that don't know. It says, "The harvest is past, the summer has ended, and we are not saved." He's not saying that he's not saved. He's talking about his loved ones, the children of Israel, his brethren. God had told them what they were supposed to do, and they didn't want to listen. For those of us that have loved and served God for a long period of time, we want to know why it is that many of our friends and relatives are not saved. But Jeremiah is saying here that they need to be told that time is running out. In today's world, it's getting darker and darker outside, and that light that we have is the only hope that they have. So when Jeremiah was saying this, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved, he's in despair. He told them and he told them, and they didn't listen. They put him in a pit and all kinds of things, but he still grieved for his loved ones. And I'm sure that we all grieve for our loved ones. And I don't think that we should never become so sentimental over the past that we forget to grieve for lost souls. I think that's what drove Paul to go out and tell people and to be stoned and all these things, because he knew that they had to be told in order to be saved. And I don't know, I think a lot of Christians think that they're very passive about it, that, we all work out our salvation, but if they're good people, they'll be saved. That's not the way Paul looked at it. He looked at it like if he didn't tell them, that he had to tell them. Otherwise, they're lost, and there's truth to that. Jeremiah did a lot of grieving over lost souls. I think a lot of times we become disconnected from the desperation and the reality of the results of the sin and wickedness in the world. And sometimes we even cozy up to it, and we can sit down right beside it and even be entertained by it. Jeremiah is known in the scriptures as the weeping prophet. In verses 9:1, it says of Jeremiah, it says, "Oh, that my head were waters and my eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain and the daughter of my people." The daughter of my people is talking about Israel. It's those are pretty strong words from a broken man. You know, Jeremiah knew God, and I believe his salvation was secure, just as, you know, we've come to know God, and we are you know, God is faithful to us. But that still, Jeremiah wept, knowing that there were loved ones out there that were unsaved. And he realizes this, and we know what the result of what happened is that most of those people, they went on to Egypt, or in type sin, and they didn't go to Babylon like God told them to. So I believe that it is natural for us as God's children to have compassion and deeply moved and bothered because those around us aren't saved. It really is true that it hurts us more than it does. It hurts us to see our loved ones not serve the Lord than it does the loved ones themselves, because they don't know, but we do. So that really should affect how we act as a Christian, as a church. You know, we have a lot of examples in the scriptures of those who risked their lives and gave their lives just to go out and tell people. You know, it says that Noah preached for 100 years, and he came away with 7 others, and they were part of his family. So I don't think we should ever lose that compassion to reach out to those you know, who don't know him. And I don't mean just our families, but everybody we meet. No matter how wicked the world seems, we should never give up on others. I think that we can rest assured that, you know, our salvation is secure because he has promised us. But you know, sometimes it takes a little patience. Sometimes people turn. And I think God was very patient with a lot of us too. 2 Timothy 3:1-6 says, "But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemous, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness." In other words, they're religious, but denying his power, and from such turn away. So he warns us to turn away from those. And when Jesus died on the cross, you know, he covered a multitude of sin for each of us. 1 Peter 4:7-9 says, "But the end of all things is at hand, therefore be serious and watchful in your prayers, and above all things have fervent love for one another, for love will cover a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without grumbling." And I believe what he's trying to tell us in these verses is, you know, we can't go around with sad faces all the time. And I think we have to have a time certain amount of brevity, but he's telling us that we need to be serious. We need to be watchful. And he tells us in these next two verses how we should be acting. You know, that we should be forgiving like God is forgiving. We should be hospitable to those and without grumbling. In other words, it should be something that we willingly do. I want to close with Hebrews 10:35 through 39. It says, "Therefore do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward." In other words, you have to stay strong, for you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but to those who believe to the saving of the soul. And that's where we get the strength to carry on. We should never forget what drew us to God in the first place. And we don't need to be like Lot's wife. And if you've never drawn to God, we have to remember that that's not all there is, my friend. God bless you.